Good morning. I'll call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is updates and approval of agenda for today's meeting. Dan moves approval of today's agenda as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Approval of minutes from the February 11th meeting. Bill moves approval of the minutes for the February 11th meeting. All those in favor? Carried. First item for consideration this morning is Ward 5 advertising sign development application 2509. Is a representative here to present that?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is not able to attend today, but he has asked that we proceed without him.
Okay. All right, Becky, I guess you can give us the details on that, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you said, this is development application 25/09. The proposal is to erect a 10 by 24 freestanding electronic advertising sign. The owner of the property is Brian and Elaine Wienendahl, and the applicant is Len Blackman. The legal description is northeast 212.5 west of the 4th, which is 275th Street here in Dunmore. And the property size is 1.12 acres, and the property is zoned Hamlet Commercial District. The applicant is requesting approval from the Municipal Planning Commission to place an advertising sign along Highway 1 within the hamlet of Dunmore. The proposed sign is 10 by 24 feet in size and will be an electronic display sign. The property is located along Highway 1, approximately 445 meters west of the intersection of Highway 1 and Eagle Butte Road. As the application indicates, the proposed LED electronic sign will be a one-sided sign and will be placed facing westbound traffic only. In addition, the sign will display static advertisements as opposed to motion, and there's currently a residence located on the property and is occupied by the landowner. The residence is located to the west of the proposed location of the sign, therefore will not be impacted by the illumination of the sign. There are residential properties located directly across Highway 1 from the proposed advertising sign. Since the sign falls within the hamlet boundary, Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors approval is not required. However, it is recommended that the municipality consider ATEC's recommended practices for electronic message signs. The applicant has indicated that the sign that is being utilized is equipped with the functions and features outlined in the recommended practices. In the Land Use Bylaw 2022-09, Section 15, signs, states that an electronic display sign is a Class 2 discretionary use in the Hamlet Commercial District. In Section 15.3, electronic display signs, it states that an off-site electronic display sign shall be at least 200 meters from a nearby dwelling or residential district and must not directly face the nearby dwellings or residential district. A lesser distance may be considered and approved at the discretion of the MPC. In addition, no more than one off-site electronic display sign shall be permitted per property. Finally, as a condition of approval, the MPC may regulate the overall size, location, materials, design, and proximity to other off-site electronic display signs in order to ensure that the sign is suitable for the proposed location. We did circulate the application, and Cypress County Public Works replied that they have no comments. Town of Redcliffe replied that they have reviewed the proposed development as forwarded and offers no comments. No comments were received from the City of Medicine Hat at the time of writing the report. And Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors replied that the signs located inside corporate limits located on private property do not require a permit from Transportation and Economic Corridors. ATEC has also provided recommended practices for electronic message signs, and it has been attached to this report. In summary, Alberta Transportation encourages both rural and urban municipalities not to permit electronic message signs adjacent to provincial highway right-of-way, especially those that function as graphic or video display signs. If electronic message signs are permitted, it is encouraged that the conditions outlined in this recommended practice be considered. So before I go into my recommendation, I did take some pictures. It's a little bit challenging on the highway. So this is from 2nd Ave looking south at the property. The residence is tucked in behind that shop in the trees there. Highway 1, of course, is on the other side of the fence and the proposed location of the sign. And this is looking east along the highway right-of-way with the residence there on the left. Sign location around that tree there. So this is from the other side of the highway. We're looking northeast. Proposed sign location on the right. Of course, Highway 1 and the existing residence. So just a shot looking northwest. Again, Highway 1 and the proposed sign location. And just a little closer of a picture, same shot. And then Ingrid, I think I had a aerial with some distances from the residential. If you wouldn't mind, I'll go through my recommendation, but if you put that up just for information. So, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation is that MPC approve development permit application 2509, subject to the following conditions, and with the understanding it will be constructed as outlined in the submitted application. Any changes must be submitted for approval by the Development Officer or Municipal Planning Commission. Conditions 1 through, just through 4 are standard conditions. So I'll start at number 5, which is the developer is required to adhere to the following regulations from the recommended practices for electronic display signs provided by the Government of Alberta. The sign content remains fixed or static for a minimum message display duration of 15.7 seconds. The sign panel shall not contain or display flashing, intermittent or moving lights, including animated or scrolling text. When a message is changed electronically, it must be accomplished within an interval of 0.1 seconds or less so that an approaching driver cannot perceive any blanking of the display screen. There shall be no visual effects between successive displays. It shall be equipped with a control system that automatically adjusts light emission level to ambient light so there is no cause of glare or excessive brightness. The sign panel must contain a default design that will freeze the sign panel message in one position if a malfunction occurs. In no case shall the light level exceed 300 nits between the time of sunset and sunrise, nor 5,000 nits at other times, and it must not diminish the conspicuity of nearby traffic control devices. So I have a second option, and that is that MPC refuse development permit application 2509, as the proposed sign does not meet the minimum setback requirement of 200 meters from a dwelling, as outlined in section 15.3, electronic display signs in the land use bylaw 2022-09. And that is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Becky. Do you have the dimensions? So we've got the dimensions there, 115 meters from, I guess, that's from the road or to the nearest residence, that 115? I can't read that.
Sorry, 115 meters from the sign location to the boundary of the residential district.
So our bylaw says from the residence, correct?
Yeah.
So what would the distance be to that next residence?
I would be guessing, Mr. Chairman, but we'd have to quick pull up a measurement on the map for you.
Like Dustin's.
I can answer it for you here. It's for the 3 closest residents, one to the edge of the building would be 140 meters, one would be 131, and one would be 116.
So we have 3 residents within the 200-meter limit.
4,
4?
5,
5? Okay.
possibly 6.
So just going back to the other sign that was put up by this Prairie Rose, what's the distance there to the nearest home? Was there an exemption given on that? I don't recall. There was.
MPC did approve that. I actually thought I had that distance in here, but it isn't. It's going to be about the same.
About the same? Mm-hmm. So now this sign is proposed to face straight east along the highway, not angle at all towards the houses?
That is my understanding and how it's been presented in the application.
116 is the closest on the Prairie Rose sign. Okay, we've just calculated that. All right, I'll open the floor to discussion, other than me. Go ahead, Dan. Bill?
I know that there's the Prairie Rose sign, but is that the only approved sign in the hamlet so far? Because I would be thinking that based on this, we will see more applications coming, and so it's a case of to set a precedent, because, I mean, Prairie Rose is kind of on its own, but this one won't be.
There are digital and large signs located at Blondie's, and I believe one more closer to the city, but there are no residences on the other side of the highway near those signs. So this will be the first that I'm aware of that will be in the residential section.
So to Bill's question, mine would be, is there a cumulative effect to adding more and more and more of these signs? Would that be a cumulative effect to the residences across the highway? Is there any studies on that? Do we have any information regarding cumulative effects of signs?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Dustin.
So, question I have on these signs, is there any way of shuttering them or making the light not reflect towards these residences? I'm fairly unfamiliar with the whole procedural of them. I've seen a million, but I'm just curious if there's a way to keep that light from pointing a direction. Because if they can keep that, it points down the highway, well, that's fine and dandy. But if it's, if we're going to have, I don't see a need to cause any more nuisances than necessary in a hamlet.
Right.
There's lots of places along the Trans-Canada Highway that would be way better off for signs like this, where you state the one by Blondie's, there's absolutely no residential over there, so that it's not affecting anyone. This Prairie Rose one, there's really only one house within that distance, and if I remember correctly, they've got high enough sound dampening fence that it doesn't make a difference, so they wouldn't see it anyways. So I'm a little concerned about actually having this without knowing some more information on what the signs can actually, how they can be laid out.
Nigel, go ahead. I'll get you next, Bill.
That's another quick question, too. I know the sign's 24 by 10. What's the elevation? How high off the ground is it?
Go ahead, Kayleen.
Just while Becky's looking for that, I also wanted to mention it's unfortunate that the applicant wasn't able to meet this meeting today. So just a reminder, if there are more specific questions that relate to the sign and the design of the sign, it's probably best that the applicant answer those. And we would recommend that we postpone this to a meeting to come up for next month.
That's a good idea. And I'd like to see some, if there is information out there about cumulative effects of signs, I would like to entertain that as well at that time. Bill, you had a question before we move on?
My concern is, we've all been by the sign at Prairie Rose, and it really does shine down the highway, but off the highway as well into the, well, it's more commercial area than anything else. But if this sign isn't facing down the highway, I'd be concerned about the visibility of it, the lighting, everything else. And so I think we need to talk to the applicant about that and maybe get some examples of the size of sign and what it's really going to look like.
I would agree. Dan?
Okay, with that information, I'm the one that lives in that house that the fence went up. So the sign was in before the fence went up, and it was shining right into our living room. But this one's on an angle. This one's supposed to be square. So we do need more information from the gentleman on how this is going to go. So I would move to postpone this so he can come forward.
Okay.
And with extra information that Wade's asked for from staff to come in on, I forget how he worded it, but
Cumulative.
cumulative signs.
Through the chair, no study on the county's behalf, but that's not to say that ATEC hasn't undertaken some sort of study, so we can follow up with them and see what they have available as well.
Okay, I think that's a sound proposal to come back with. Okay, so Dan has moved postponement of development application 2509. All those in favor of postponement? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so next item for application today is Ward 9, Solar Facility Time Extension Development Application 2376. Is there a representative here for that? Would you take one of the chairs up front, please? So first of all, there's a button to press to speak that will light up. There you go. And if you would please introduce yourself and...
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rahim Rauji. I'm a Director of Development for the Jurassic Solar and Battery Project.
Thank you. Okay, so again, we have time extension application 2376. Go ahead, Becky. Musical chairs here today.
Okay, so development permit 2376. This is a solar facility. The proposal is to construct and operate a commercial solar facility and battery energy storage system and associated 240 kV substation. The owner of the property is Catherine Knutson, and the applicant is Jurassic Solar LP. And the property legal land description is Northwest 182010 west of the 4th. Property size is 160 acres, and it's agricultural district 2. So, Mr. Chairman, I have an update for today. Of course, this was approved back in 2023. I'll go through my update. If the board wishes, being that we have new members, to go through the entire background, I do have that attached. If you'd like me to review that as well, I can. Jurassic Solar is requesting approval from the Municipal Planning Commission for a time extension to development permit 2376, issued April 18, 2023. As the letter of intent indicates, construction has commenced for the substation and BESS area beginning in October of 2023. However, since then, the project has undergone minor changes to its layout as well as equipment updates, which has resulted in required amendments to the AUC approval. On February 12, 2025, the AUC issued an updated approval for the solar facility with the projected completion date of January 31st, 2026. With this delay, construction will not be completed by the time the development permit 2376 expires. In review of the previous permit and its condition, the applicant has submitted an updated emergency response plan, a vegetation management plan, decommissioning and reclamation details, and has met with Cypress County Public Works regarding the necessity for a road use agreement. The applicant has requested a few minor amendments, there's 3 in total, be made to the conditions and proposal of development permit 2376, which have been indicated throughout the report in red text. So as you saw in the proposal, we've added the battery energy storage system and associated substation. This was part of the approval. It was just encompassed under commercial solar facility, and the applicant has requested that we break that out. The second amendment is to condition number 9, and that is to add BESS equipment into that condition. So it'll read all solar panels, BESS equipment, and related infrastructure are required to be set back a minimum distance of 40 meters from the center of all county roads and must follow all other minimum setback requirements in the current land use bylaw. The developer is required to submit a final surveyed plan to the county to ensure compliance with this condition prior to commencement. And the third amendment is to condition 16, and that is to change solar facility to the word developer. So it would read, the developer must report to Cypress County if the facility needs to be offline for a period exceeding 6 months. The MPC will review and will review the report to determine if the facility will be considered online or whether the facility or portions of must be considered for remediation. Mr. Chairman, our recommendation is to approve the one-year time extension with the 3 amendments noted. If you'd like me to review any of the background, please let me know.
So I'll pose the question to Planning Commission. Is there anyone on Commission that requires more information from Becky regarding this application? One thing that comes to mind, and this may just be technical, but on condition 16, if you change it to developer, does that transfer over to operator, or should that state operator? The developer may not be the operator down the road.
Sure, and I can pass, through the chair, I can pass that on to Rahim to answer. From our perspective, it was solar facility before. It's not specific to who is operating it, so that will be up to the board to decide how they want that worded.
I guess I'll put that up for discussion, but that's my opinion, that we should be using operator, not developer. Okay. Is that okay with the applicant to amend that? Okay. Okay, with that being said, and that amendment, Dustin moves approval with application 2376 for the time extension with amendments as indicated. All those in favor? Carried. So your development permit has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's now a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. Development permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within that 21-day period, it will become valid at that time. If you have any further questions, you can contact the development officer.
Mr. Chair, sorry, item for clarification for the applicant. The application actually isn't subject to appeal because it's just a time extension?
The time extensions cannot be appealed?
No. No, time extensions
Okay.
are not subject to appeal. So just item of clarification.
All right, check that. You've been approved. Next contestant. Now we know. Now we know the rest of the story. Okay, so next item for consideration is subdivision application, Ward 7, Country Residential Subdivision Application, 25CY01. Is there a representative for that application here? Come on up. Mr. Monroe's in stealth mode today, hiding on there. Okay, again, subdivision application 25CY01. Go ahead, Becky. You need
Okay.
to introduce the applicant.
Subdivision,
Nothing.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Subdivision 25CY01. The proposal is to subdivide a 2.36 hectare parcel from a previously subdivided quarter section to create a separate title. Owner of the property is Stewart and Carmia Green, and the applicant is Monroe Surveys. The legal description is Northwest 6-12-5 west of the 4th. And this application is intended to subdivide a 2.36 hectare or 5.8 acre parcel from a previously subdivided quarter section for the purposes of creating a separate title. The remainder of the agricultural title contains irrigated cropland as well as dryland pasture and is 23 hectares or 58.2 acres in size. There is an overland drainage system running through the property, splitting it into an east and west side. There are no oil or gas wells within a 100-meter radius of the proposed subdivision. The property is located along Range Road 60, approximately 1 kilometer north of Township Road 120. There is an established yard site located on the property which gains direct access to Range Road 60 from an existing approach. There does not appear to be an access approach to the proposed parcel. If the application were to be approved, the Municipal Planning Commission may need to consider the installation of an access approach as a subdivision approval condition. In addition, the area contains water rights provided through the St. Mary's River Irrigation District. The applicant has received preliminary approval from the district to allow the water rights to allocate the water rights to another piece of land within the parcel. Therefore, the irrigable acres on the site are not anticipated to be impacted. The applicant has submitted the proposed lot layout to accommodate an existing access drive to the remnant lands and an established row of willow trees, while accommodating the subdivision density requirements in the potential growth area of the Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan. Additionally, there is a gas pipeline right-of-way which bisects the east boundary of the proposed parcel. This pipeline creates a logical property boundary. There is an established industrial subdivision which is located approximately 700 meters to the south, and a multi-lot country residential subdivision to the southwest. The Cypress County Council recently approved a land use rezoning to country residential limited district to allow the subdivision to be in compliance with the municipal development plan policies. The subdivision will result in the final title to be taken out of the quarter section under the current potential growth area policies of the Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan. The South Saskatchewan Regional Plan states that municipalities are to identify their agricultural land and to limit fragmentation and conversion to non-agricultural uses. Under the implementation section of the plan, section 5, efficient use of land, it states that the land use framework promotes approaches to reduce the amount of land that is taken up by permanent or long-term development by utilizing the minimum amount of land necessary. Section 666 states that a subdivision authority may require the owner of a parcel of land that is the subject of a proposed subdivision to provide reserve. Money in place of municipal reserve is recommended on the proposed subdivided parcel. Part 2.9 Road Access of the Subdivision Regulations of the Municipal Government Act states that every proposed subdivision must provide direct access to a road or a lawful means of access satisfactory to the subdivision authority to each lot that is created. Section 2.6 Potential Growth Area of the Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan states that the county wishes to retain the rural nature of its ratepayers and believes that serviced residential development outside existing hamlet boundaries becomes more costly and difficult to administer and maintain. The county has a limited capacity to provide an urban level of water and sewer services to the IDP area and its other hamlets. The city has made long-term servicing decisions, establishing an internal trunk servicing pattern that is intended to service future city development in accordance with its municipal development plan. The IDP recognizes that it is in the interests of both the city and county to retain large parcel sizes for agricultural purposes. In section 2.6.2, potential growth area policy, it states continued agricultural and agricultural support uses within the potential growth area are preferred. Uses other than agricultural or agricultural support uses should not be allowed unless they are an existing use or the expansion of an existing use prior to the adoption of the IDP. Parcels located within the potential growth area of the IDP may be considered by the county for a land use bylaw amendment and subdivision approval for limited country residential use. The cumulative area of subdivision shall not exceed 10% of the area of the original parcel to be subdivided as it existed prior to the adoption of this IDP. In order to be eligible for further subdivision into limited country residential lots, an unsubdivided parcel must be greater than 16.18 hectares or 40 acres in size. Subdivision of a parcel 40 acres or less for limited country residential shall not be permitted, and limited country residential shall not be permitted on irrigated land. Section 4.1.24, Subdivision Tri-Area IDP of the Municipal Development Plan states that the county shall follow all applicable policies within the Tri-Area IDP related to subdivision for the lands within the IDP boundary. And finally, utility easements may be required between the proposed parcel and the remainder of the agricultural title. When we circulated the application, Cypress County Finances replied that there is a Westside Water Co-op license associated with the property. Therefore, if the property is subdivided, the county will require notification as to which property the license is to remain with. Cypress County Public Works replied that the proposed subdivision will require a new access approach. In addition, it appears that the existing access approach for the remnant property is on SMERD property. This may need to be investigated for correction. Apex Utilities replied that they have no objection to the proposed subdivision. Fortis Alberta replied that they have reviewed the plan and determined no easement is required. TELUS replied they have no objection with the proposed subdivision. Equus replied that they have no objections. St. Mary's River Irrigation District replied that they have reviewed the application and stated that there is sufficient land area to keep the water rights on the remnant parcel and can easily be adjusted to the eastern portion. If the subdivision is approved, the district requires that the following conditions are met. If the proposed subdivided homestead lot wishes to use water from the district for the yard site, a household purposes agreement must be signed with the district prior to any water use. Currently, the turnout for the agricultural irrigation acres is in the northwest corner of the site. It appears that this has been accommodated for in the design of the subdivision. This turnout must remain on that parcel. If this should change with final survey, a remote delivery agreement will be required. All works, easements, etc. involved to provide water to the proposed subdivision will be at the landowner's expense. In order for SMERD to execute consent to register subdivision, any outstanding balances owed by the applicant will need to be paid in full. And provided that ownership is remaining with the current owner, the irrigation acres will be adjusted to the eastern portion of the remnant agricultural parcel. The irrigation acres are being shifted within the same parcel. Westside Water Co-op replied that they have no concerns. City of Medicine Hat Environment, Land and Gas Production replied that they have reviewed the application and offers the following comments. They did supply a map displaying their gas facilities that are within proximity to the proposed subdivision. Surface improvements are not permitted within the City of Medicine Hat pipeline utility right-of-way and within 100 meters of any City of Medicine Hat wellhead, unless the landowner applies to and receives approval from the Alberta Energy Regulator and the city for a setback reduction. Any ground disturbances or surface improvements within 30 meters of any City of Medicine Hat gas pipeline or within 100 meters of any gas wells will require a crossing or proximity agreement. Town of Redcliffe replied that they have reviewed the proposed subdivision and offer no comments. City of Medicine Hat replied that the proposal is consistent with the potential growth area policies in the existing tri-area intermunicipal development plan. Therefore, they have no concerns. Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors replied that the requirements of both Section 18 and 19 are not met. However, the department anticipates minimal impact on the highway, as well as there is no direct access to the highway. Therefore, ATEC grants approval for the subdivision authority to vary the requirements of Section 18 and 19 of the regulation. And the Cypress County Assessor provided a market value assessment rate of $27,792.10 per hectare for money in place of municipal reserve purposes. So that, Mr. Chairman, takes me to my recommendation, and that is for MPC to move to approve subdivision 25CY01 subject to the following conditions. Number one, the developer is required to make a payment to the county for money in place of municipal reserve for 2.36 hectares at a rate of $2,779.21 per hectare, being 10% of the appraised market value of $27,792.10 per hectare. The payment is to be submitted to the county prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. Number two, it is the developer's responsibility to enter into any necessary agreements with St. Mary's River Irrigation District for the supply of water to the proposed subdivision and the remnant parcel. The developer will be required to provide written evidence to the requirements of the SMERD, that SMERD has been satisfied prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. The developer is required to provide Cypress County with written verification from St. Mary's River Irrigation District that the irrigation acres have been adjusted to the easterly portion within the remnant agricultural title prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. Number four, the developer is required to provide Cypress County finances with written notification if the intent is to transfer the local improvement tax for Westside Water Co-op to the subdivided parcel prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. It is the developer's responsibility to ensure that all necessary agreements are executed with the Westside Water Co-op. Number 5, the developer is required to enter into a municipal services agreement with the county for the construction of an access approach from Range Road 60 to the subdivided parcel. The municipal services agreement is to be executed and registered in conjunction with the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And number 6, the developer is required to supply copies of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, or agreements which are to be registered as a requirement for any affected utilities to Cypress County prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And that is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Becky. Does the applicant have any discussion points they want to talk about?
Yeah, just a couple of things here. It was mentioned that the access point coming off Range Road 60 encroached into the SMRD canal right away. And we have a communication from SMRD saying that they know that that's the case and they have no issues with it the way it is right now.
Is that was a former canal that's been buried, is it?
It's still open.
It's still open? Okay.
Yeah, and I guess the other point would be an access point, another access point off Range Road 60. We left a space between the southerly boundary of the new parcel to the canal, and we'll do an access right-of-way plan and documentation that'll be registered concurrently with the subdivision. If we can just keep that approach, and then both parties, if that acreage is sold, both parties can use that access road. It's good, it's gravelled, it's built up, so.
Makes more sense than another.
Yeah, I didn't want to just take another access point, not put it on Range Road 60.
Right. Okay. Okay, I'll open the floor to discussion. Bill?
I can't really tell from the picture, but is this today irrigated land?
Yes, it is.
And my understanding is that taking out irrigated land is, I mean, this would be a small piece, but is not recommended by the county.
Go ahead, Kayleen.
Thank you through the chair. And to Member Thompson, Council did have a at-length discussion during the public hearing on this very application. And we reassured Council at the time that if the subdivision were to be approved by the Commission, that we would attach the appropriate subdivision approval conditions to ensure that we're not losing the irrigable rights. So it's not that we're taking the irrigation out of production, it's that we're reallocating them to a different area within the same parcel. So just for the Planning Commission's understanding, Council did discuss this. They did approve the land use amendment and the bylaw. And we're bringing this forward for your consideration.
How many acres are irrigated on the parcel? How many acres of water rights?
20 acres total in that western portion. That's the total.
Total in the western portion, total for the property.
Total for the property.
Is that portion east of the subdivision 20 acres or bigger?
No. No, the irrigable water rights would be moved over to the dryland portion on the east, southeast corner. Yes.
What'll still work?
There's no water rights on that east side.
They're not gonna move the full 20 acres over, just a portion that's coming out.
Yeah, I get it, but I mean, I'm just, right now you got one contiguous property that's irrigated, and now we're gonna break it up into two small chunks. Bill, go ahead.
Unless this picture isn't showing a real, what the property is, it does not look like there's a big enough area for it to be reallocated.
Yeah, this was hashed out in council for quite some time. There's a lot of discussion on it. It's unfortunate that this level has to try and fight for what the council was, but council did approve it eventually, so it's all been hashed out. So.
So why does it come to planning commission if everything's hashed out? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, what are we sitting here for?
And the irritable acres has been discussed, but this has to be brought to planning for this part of it.
Go ahead, Brian.
I'll just say overall, I think it's met all the criteria for the subdivision. I think any water that might have been used on the proposed subdivision can be allocated elsewhere on the property, whether it's in 2 spots or whether it's all, hooked together or whatever. There's still lots of acres for that water to be allocated.
Maybe so, but I mean, right now, you have a wheel line system or a flood system or something there on that one piece, and it can be irrigated. Well, if you have part of it irrigated, and then you have to irrigate another part, are we really accomplishing the goals of keeping irrigated parcels together and productive? I mean, how do you get productivity when you can't even run proper equipment on it in one parcel?
I think right now it's flood irrigated, isn't it, in there?
Yes, that original 20 acres is flood irrigated. The dryland portion where the cursor is sitting right now is approximately 19 acres.
So how would water be delivered through that low area to the other side? That's the question.
The discussion with SMRID was that the remaining portion of the west 20 acres, so east of the proposed subdivision, would be used for a little bit more intensive agriculture requiring greater irrigation in that remaining, 14 acres roughly.
So the piece that's remaining that's currently, you can see the cross-hatching that's obviously farmed. What size is that area? That remaining cultivated area?
Where the cursor is
Correct.
currently, that's approximately 16 acres. That original east portion that was all hayland with overland flooding was about 20 acres, 19 acres roughly.
So you're going to be 4 acres short in that area for irrigating, approximately.
Correct. On paper, yes, the irrigable acres would be moved off to the east. In a matter of function and consumption, it would remain in the 14 acres remaining there.
Dustin?
I think one thing to be noted is I'm happy to actually see them keeping the water rights on site instead of selling them off. So we know as well as anybody else, we can, as farmers can allocate our water rights wherever we want to. We can move them from places that we don't irrigate to places that we want to irrigate more. So, the fact that they're being reallocated on the property and not moved off, that makes me okay with this.
But the thing is, if it's not a farmable unit as irrigation, it inevitably will be disposed of because this is not an economic way to farm irrigation land.
So, I look at places like this, and this whole area kind of messes with my head a little bit because we've rented land in there before, and the way I look at it is it might be, like they're saying, more valuable as intensive irrigation on intensive agriculture, where they get into that market gardening, vertical horticulture sort of thing. The water rights would be actually way more valuable in that regard on less acres than they would be as they are on floodland. Because as well as I do how economical floodland is.
Yeah. My concern is just remaining an economical irrigable unit.
Yep.
And that's not going to happen in this case from what I can see.
To what I see they're doing here is they move their bit of flood over onto that other side, even though it may not be, or irrigation acres onto the other side, it may not be used over there, but it'll be used on the property still, just in allowing them more water, which is a good thing these days.
What's soil class in that land?
Probably a 4 or 5.
No way. CLI or?
Well, we're 5.6 in our area. Yeah, we are.
Not the irrigable land. If you look at the Canadian land inventory, we're class well, depending where it is. This has got to be Class 2 or 3 land.
Oh, no. We don't have any class 2 down here.
Okay, we're talking about different classification systems. I'm talking about Canadian land inventory.
Yeah, I'm talking about
The Alberta one?
Yeah, the
Oh,
Alberta
okay,
one.
yeah, okay. Okay. Lloyd?
It's quite a discussion we're having, but I have to agree with Dan that council really went into a lot of discussion for a long time over this. And I agree with Dustin that the water's been allocated to another portion of it, so I have no problem with it either.
Okay. So are you moving it then?
I'll move it.
Okay. So Dan moves approval. It's Lloyd. Lloyd moves approval of Dan's suggestion. Okay, Lloyd moves approval of subdivision application 25CY1 with, as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Your subdivision has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will now mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You're advised to begin working towards completing the necessary conditions and making arrangements to have the approved subdivided area surveyed if you have not already done so. You have 1 year from the subdivision approval date to have met all of the approval conditions and to have the survey plan submitted to Alberta Land Titles by your surveyor for the registration of the separate title. If you have any further questions, you can contact the planner after today's meeting. Thank you. Yep. 2 minute, we're going to have a 2-minute recess. Back to order. Next item on the agenda is other business planners report. We got a little pamphlet here. Do you want to talk about that, Kayleen? Is that what this pamphlet's for, or is it just for us to take home?
We'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah. So planners report, it's presented for your information. The recommended motion is that the Planning Commission accepts the report for information. Notable coming out of this report is we did receive, or the tribunal rather, received an appeal against the decision of the Planning Commission from our last meeting pertaining to the construction of a shop in proximity to a creek. So that hearing has been scheduled for March 21st, and Becky's in process of preparing for that meeting. So we will represent the Planning Commission at that meeting.
Okay. All right, so we need a motion for acceptance of this. Nigel moves to accept the information as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Anything else? That's it? Any discussion regarding the planners report that was presented to us as part of the meeting packet? Nothing? Okay, next meeting is April 8th.
Sorry, through the chair, there is a short slideshow presentation, MPC presentation that we'd like to go over. 6.2.
There it is. Okay, yeah. I guess let's move on to the slide presentation.
Through the chair, we like to try to attempt to do one of these presentations once a year. Sometimes it happens every other year. But mainly opportunity is to provide the Planning Commission with a high-level understanding of our process, the bylaws and policies that apply, and mainly give you guys opportunity to ask questions. That's really why we're here. So if you have burning questions you want to ask, please interject at any time. Okay, so today we'd like to go over a brief overview of the hierarchy, that's a case of beer, of planning legislation in the province. We'd like to go over the role of the Municipal Planning Commission, the process of development permits and subdivision, and also an update on how appeals are handled in the province. So starting from the top, the plans that you see there highlighted in orange are provincial policies, and the ones highlighted below are shown in blue, which are municipal policies. The Alberta Land Stewardship Act, firstly, is the act which enables the province to provide direction and leadership for provincial objectives. Followed below there is the Municipal Government Act, which acts as a rulebook for how municipalities are to operate and govern. Particularly, Part 17 of the Act addresses planning and development matters and forms the legal basis for the county to implement our bylaws and our policies. The Historical Resources Act provides land use requirements concerning the designation and protection of identified resources in the province. And finally, the Land Use Framework implements the province's direction through regional plans, and they're based upon watersheds. So in our reports, when we're referencing the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan and the policies within that plan, this is where that falls within the hierarchy. Intermunicipal development plans, as well as now intercollaboration frameworks, are statutory plans which coordinate growth, land use, and servicing between the municipalities. Requirement of IDPs may be opted out with written agreement of all municipalities. Municipalities must adopt a municipal development plan, and again is considered a statutory plan. The MDP acts as a blueprint for how a municipality will grow over a 20-plus year time horizon. It communicates the council's goals and objectives with supporting policies and strategies. Area structure plans are considered statutory plans and are a high-level concept for a sub-regional area and help guide decision-making and identify how development and servicing will occur within a defined boundary. And lastly, the land use bylaw is the main municipal planning tool used by the county to regulate all land uses and buildings within the municipality. It is one of the county's tools to implement the goals, objectives, and policies of other statutory plans, such as the Municipal Development Plan. The land use bylaw works by providing the county into districts when residential, commercial, industrial, and institutional uses may be located. This is the planning hierarchy of legislation in Alberta. Each lower plan must comply with the plan above it. If there is an inconsistency in the plan above it prevails. Any questions so far? Section 623 of the Municipal Government Act requires that council establish a subdivision authority and a development authority by bylaw. Section 640 of the MGA also requires that council adopt a land use bylaw. The Municipal Planning Commission is appointed through the Municipal Planning Commission bylaw and the land use bylaw to consider and decide upon applications for subdivision and development. This provides an overview of our various processes. So applications to amend the land use bylaw, or otherwise known as land use reclassifications, is a process that's used to reassign a land district from one to another. Council has the authority to assign land use districts through the land use bylaw. The process requires a bylaw to receive 3 readings to receive approval, and prior to second reading, a public hearing is to be held. An application for a land use reclassification may sometimes be a prerequisite for an application for subdivision or development. Applications for subdivision are submitted when a landowner or interested party requires a separate land title to be created. Often this may facilitate the sale of a property, correct an encroachment, or prepare lot boundary adjustments for estate planning purposes. The supporting direction for subdivision is established through the province's land use framework, again the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, and council through their statutory plans. An application for council to amend to the appropriate land use district may be required prior to a subdivision being considered. Under development applications, the land use bylaw exempts certain uses from the requirement of a development permit. Those uses require a permit that are required to obtain those uses that require a permit are required to obtain a permit prior to commencement. The land use bylaw assigns the authority to the Municipal Planning Commission, as well as to administration, to administer the requirements of the land use bylaw. This includes matters such as issuance of permits, as well as enforcement matters. The land use bylaw is presently divided into 20 different land use districts, and they are further divided into 3 categories. First category is permitted uses. These are reviewed and decided upon by administration and are commonly considered as a right and are not subject to appeal. Class 1 discretionary uses, again, are reviewed and decided upon by administration, however, are subject to appeal by affected parties. And discretionary Class 2 are decided upon by the Municipal Planning Commission and are subject to appeal. So when the Development Officer and the Municipal Planning Commission are considering discretionary use applications, the following test under the MGA applies. The test is, would the proposed development unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood? Would the proposed development materially interfect with or affect the use, enjoyment, or value of neighboring parcels? And does the proposed development conform with the use prescribed for that land or building in the land use bylaw? So when we're reviewing applications for development, those are the 3 key questions that we should be considering. In some cases, conditions of a development permit may assist to alleviate direct or perceived nuisances. The land use bylaw also implements specific use criteria for more common uses that have a potential for greater impact. So in the case of gravel pit operations, as an example, we have minimum requirements embedded in the land use bylaw that establish minimum setbacks from residential so that we can help to control or mitigate some of those potential nuisances. The Municipal Government Act outlines who may appeal a subdivision decision, and it is quite limited. A subdivision can be appealed by the applicant, a government department if they're a required referral, a school board, and they are not appealable by adjacent landowners. An appeal concerning the decision of a subdivision authority is filed within 14 days. On development appeals, the Government Act states that decisions by the development authority are appealable by any person affected by an order, decision, or development permit. So it doesn't need to be an adjacent landowner. It can be somebody that's 10 miles away that feels impacted, and they have the ability to appeal that decision. Appeals on permitted uses are only considered if a permit was issued in error or the bylaw requirements were varied or misinterpreted. And an appeal concerning a development permit has 21 days from the date of issue to be appealed. Under Section 678 and 685 of the Municipal Government Act, it outlines the cases where appeals are launched to the Land and Property Rights Tribunal rather than our own local appeal board. And that list is actually quite extensive. So an appeal is made to the tribunal if the land is subject of the application is within any of the below. So within a green zone that's identified by the minister under the Public Lands Act, if the land contains or is adjacent to or is within the prescribed distance of a highway, a water body, a sewage treatment or waste management facility, or to a historical site. Water body might mean a canal, it might mean reservoir, it might mean a creek. It is the subject of a license, permit, approval, or other authorization granted by the Natural Resources Conservation Board, the Energy Resources Conservation Board, the Alberta Energy Regulator, Alberta Energy and Utilities Board, Alberta Utility Commission, and the Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, or the Ministry of Forestry, Parks, and Tourism. So if we think about subdivision applications that have a gas line running across the property, that gas line being on that property would automatically mean that those appeals go to the tribunal rather than our local appeal board. And an appeal to the Court of Appeal only lies on a question of law or jurisdiction. So just because an applicant doesn't agree with the decision of the tribunal, it doesn't mean they can just appeal it. It has to be a question on law or jurisdiction being able to hear that appeal. So kind of a quick rundown for you guys. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
So effectively, most of our decisions are made with gas lines or adjacent to roads, or some, a larger majority than we would suspect are due to go to the tribunal, not the appeal board, correct?
That is correct, yeah. Actually, a large number since this new municipal government came into effect. It largely, I think, takes off a lot of the appeal pressure on our own local board. And majority would go to the tribunal under those cases.
Interesting. That's all I have. Anything else? It's easy.
We'll try to bring one of these forward and try to change up the topics on you a little bit, so. Sorry, one other thing I should add is we're kind of on the topic. Council did pass a new procedural bylaw which applies to council, but it also applies to council committees. So I think our legislative supervisor, Leslie Ann, will be sending out that procedural bylaw for Planning Commission's review. So please take a look at it when she sends it, and if there's any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Kayleen. Any questions? So I'll ask for a motion to approve your presentation as presented.
Just as information, Mr. Chairman, is great.
So we don't need a motion if it's just for information? Or we do need a motion? Okay. Okay. Motion for information. Dan moves a motion for information approval. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, next meeting, April 8th. First of all, I should get any other questions or concerns regarding the other business section of our agenda? Okay. So next meeting is April 8th. Adjourn the meeting.